On this prequel episode, we've got our Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy fan poll follow-up. We're learning about E.L. James and previewing 50 Shades Darker. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. We want to get right into it with our patron shoutouts.
I put up with you because your father and mother were our finest patrons, that's why.
No new patrons this week, but we do have our Academy Award winners. And they are Steve from Arizona, Paul, Kat Ensminger, Ben Wilcox, Jeff Niederhofer, Teresa Schwartz, Ian from Wine Country, Just Another Patron, Winchester's Forever, Kelly Napier, Gray Hightower, Eli Youngs, Gratch, Just Gratch, Shelby Says It Calls from the Veil is out now. That Darn Skag, V. Frank, I also find Tom Hardy interesting, and Alina Starkov. Thank you all very much for supporting us and continuing to support us at the $15 patron level. You're all truly the best. All right, Katie, let's find out what people had to say about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, on Patreon, we had 3 votes for the movie, 1 for the book, and 1 listener who couldn't pick between the two. Steve from Arizona said, "Can we choose neither?" Yes, that is an option.
Oh, yep.
I watched this movie when it came to the theaters, and I was so entranced is in scare quotes, by it. I literally took a 20-minute bathroom break in the middle of this movie and didn't care if I missed important information. This is literally the only time a movie has aggravated me to the point of disinterest. During my film projectionist days, I had to screen movies like Marcy X or Marcy 10. I don't know. I've never heard of that.
I think it's Marcy X. I have that on the Good, Better, Bad, Bad shelf somewhere back here. Steve may have sent it in. I don't know. Somebody sent us that film.
Marcy X or 10. Gods and Generals. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Giggly? It's Giggly, or is it
It's Geely. It's Geely.
Swept Away and White Chicks. I've only seen How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I have not seen any of those. It's funny. I just watched a video about Gods and Generals literally yesterday about how it's a Civil War movie, but it's like, it's literally like, Lost Cause, Confederate propaganda that was made in like 2001 or something like that, by this strange producer writer guy. And it's very much apparently, again, I have not seen it. I just watched a video from like a Civil War history channel or something on YouTube about how that film is legitimately like just awful, like propaganda that tries to recuperate the image of the Confederacy.
I would not call How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days that bad of a movie.
From what I've heard, I didn't think it was very bad.
Kind of a mediocre, like middling chick flick from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steve from Arizona went on to say, "Yeah, those terrible films were way more interesting. Needless to say, this movie was so bad, I am glad you are back on the 50 Shades nightmare train. I don't even want to read the book. Let's just leave it there because I will be morphing into a level of frustration and insanity akin to Brian's reviews of the Billy Owens movies."
It seems likely. It's not a book I have any interest in reading. Now that I've watched the movie, not one of those where I'm like, oh, maybe I would check out that book. Good. I'm good.
Yeah.
The movie, I was as uninteresting as I generally found the film. I can only imagine the book would be worse. Again, you picked the book, but anyways.
I think you could probably pay me enough to read the sequels, but I wouldn't read them on my own.
Right. Yes.
Ian from Wine Country said, 100% on board with Brian here. This is a very well-made movie with an astoundingly talented cast, and I couldn't have cared less.
Yep. That's fair. It seems like that's a pretty consistent opinion.
Yeah. Lost Remote Control said, the movie wins, but first I gotta come at Brian for his butter takes. Margarine
I knew that would ruffle somebody's feathers.
Margarine tastes off on toast. I guess I've just lived below the poverty line for too long. I don't really notice.
And honestly, I don't even know if butter is more expensive than margarine at this point anymore anyways, but Or I guess it depends on the margarine you get. But yeah, because that used to be the thing. It's like margarine was like much cheaper than butter.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even the case anymore.
I
It
have no
probably
idea.
is, but I don't know. I just am a big fan of margarine. I think it's fine. I like it on toast. I like when you get good margarine. I've always been, since I'm a child, we've always used, I can't believe it's not butter. So what I grew up on, and maybe I'm just biased from having literally had nothing else. I mean, we had butter occasionally, but we pretty rarely.
We pretty much only used butter for like baking. Or
Yeah,
cooking.
it's similar.
growing
Like
up.
we used it for baking.
We were
and
country
stuff.
crock people.
My grandma had country crock, but my mom was big on I can't believe it's not butter. So
Yeah.
and I like now the one we always get is the I can't believe it's not butter, the olive oil one, I think, or it's like a slightly different version of it, and I really like that one. I think it's got good flavor. It spreads good. The spreading is the thing for me. I hate. And I know, like, you just leave it out, like that's part of it is like where butter that you're gonna use for that, you just leave it on the counter or whatever.
Right.
But that's weird to me. I don't like that. And spreading even remotely cool butter is impossible, and I hate it.
It's also hard to leave butter out when you have like nosy cats.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get a little butter dip, like
Our
the
cats,
little
I
cover.
know our cats are pretty nosy.
Yeah,
though.
they might knock off the lid and get their nose in there.
Anyway, Lost Remote Control went on to say, and back to the movie, I will quote my wife, quote, "That was a beautifully filmed nap."
There you go.
Now that being said, I am not exactly sure why I would vote movie other than not having read the book.
I mean, that's fair.
Fair.
Yeah. And again, I didn't completely hate watching the movie. I found it interesting at times, and I found it enjoyable enough. I wouldn't recommend it to most people.
Yeah.
I might recommend it to like my dad.
Yeah.
Like maybe, but he would probably fall asleep, honestly. Like I wouldn't recommend it to most people. But it's also, again, like as other people have said, it's a well-made film, and it's not like bad. It's just
I think my mom commented on like just like
I do
one
remember
of our
that, yeah.
random posts for this and said something like, "I really wanted to like this movie" or
yes,
something
and then
like that.
and just didn't. Yeah.
Our last comment on Patreon was from Jeff Niederhofer, the patron who requested
it.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And Jeff said, "I had a feeling this one would generate an interesting discussion. I've never read the book, but your reading of the film as a subtle rumination on toxic masculinity exactly encapsulates the main reason I love it."
Well, I'm glad you got out of this. I'm glad we could identify that vein and tap it so you could get out of this what you were looking for. That's good.
I agree with what I take to be Brian's point that the narrative is relatively uninteresting, but that doesn't matter to me because I'm here to watch apathetic, self-loathing, privileged white men trying hard to be relevant.
You know, and that's fair. I get that. Like I said,
and you know, if that's what you're here for,
that's what you're here for.
Pick the great
Yep.
film for it.
That's what you get. What it's right on the 10. Yeah, no, and I like I said, the movie did. I mentioned several times in the episode. The movie definitely grew on me in retrospect, and I enjoyed it more thinking about it afterwards than I did watching it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed our discussion of it more than I enjoyed either watching or reading it.
yeah, and I enjoyed our discussion of it more than I anticipated going into having the discussion of the film. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as we were like, but you know, as I was doing the notes and stuff, and then you know, up until we started recording, I didn't really. Not that I just wasn't expecting to have as interesting of a discussion as we ended up having. So, yeah.
All right. Over on Facebook, we had 1 vote for the movie and 3 for the book. And we had 1 comment, as a long one, from Andy, who said, "I voted book. I agree that the film is clearly well made, but for me, it represents a huge missed opportunity. When Lucara, I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name. I think it's Lucara. I found it was like an interview from NPR or something. that
They're
had
usually pretty good about
Lucara.
that kind of stuff.
I was gonna say they usually are. When Lucara wrote the book, much of the Cambridge 5 story was not yet declassified, and the extent of it was not known publicly. He was limited in what he could write and had a poor reception to his more openly critical novels like The Looking Glass War. Kim Philby, real-life Bill Hayden, was from the upper class, but during college came to genuinely believe that the rise of fascism around the 30s was linked to capitalism and empire. After the initial defections and scandal, he continued to operate for 10 more years and then escaped to Moscow. There was no George Smiley to catch him or scold him for being Stalin's lapdog. He even wrote a memoir in which he confirmed everything that Le Carre hinted at in the book, that he was able to operate so long because of class prejudice, incompetence, and self-interest in it's MI6, right?
Yeah.
MI6. This is the internet in 2020, so I have to state I am not a tanky or supporter of authoritarians.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Imagine the film if it delved more into Hayden, suggesting.
I wasn't trying to stop. I was finding this interesting. Sorry, continue. I will let you finish.
Imagine the film if it delved more into Hayden, suggesting that part of his motivation or ideas had some truth to it, that we bore some responsibility for his radicalization, and if he got away. The characters would have to take a much harder look at themselves, and so would we, the viewer. And of course, for real-life George Le Carre, the story ended at having to quit the service. There was no second chance. The issues are there in the film, but rather than being subtle, I think they're underexplored.
I don't think those issues are even there in the film. I got none of the class stuff, his motivations being remotely tied to a critique of capitalism and the imperialism or anything like that.
Well, then a lot of that is, and he has a much longer, like, villain monologue at the end. Yeah. After he gets caught, and a lot of that is from that. Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
There may have been a little bit of it in the speech that like in his conversation with Smiley at the end that I'm just not recalling. But the reason I was excited, I think that's a really interesting angle, and I would have loved to seen that explored more, as Andy's kind of saying here. I didn't, I would not have the movie takes Hayden's motivation, at least from what we discussed, and turns it into one of a privileged white dude grasping for relevance in a world no longer in need of him or whatever,
which is a lot of what the book is about. Yes, but there are other like layers and levels.
But that's true for every character in the film. Whereas Hayden, it sounds like, at least from what Andy is saying here, at least his real life analog, whatever the guy's name, Kim Philby, his motivation was potentially a lot more interesting and nuanced. And again, I, being, the lefty that I am, would have loved to see that explored. I think that's a really interesting. And then, Smiley having to confront whatever he said here at the end. Taking the characters would have to take a harder look at themselves. And kind of confront the motivations of Hayden and why he did what he did, and as an examination of capitalism versus I think that's really interesting. I agree that the movie does not remotely get into that in a way that I even really noticed. So,
which, like I said in my final verdict, is a large reason that I gave it to the book, because the book just did a better job of accomplishing what this story had set out to do.
Yeah.
All right. Over on Twitter, we had 3 votes for the movie and 1 for the book.
Also, real quick, the class prejudice thing, it was Hayden. I didn't get any hint in the movie that Hayden came from.
So it's discussed at a couple different points in the book. Not like in depth from my memory. But it is discussed that like all of the upper level guys in the Secret Service are like, they come from the upper class. So there's this issue of kind of like the ego, like we talked about, and the complacency and the like self-interest and like trying to put your own self forward, rather than caring about like the group effort,
right?
I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, which is not something that's present in the movie.
No.
I guess you could read it into the movie if you knew.
Yeah, I think if you knew, you probably could.
Yeah.
But not knowing, it's again, maybe on a rewatch I would know. Like now knowing it, I think I might. But initially, I did not get any of that. Huh. Interesting.
All right, so on Twitter, we had 3 votes for the movie and 1 for the book. Shelby says, "It Calls from the Veil" is out now. Said, "Your discussion of blonde Benedict Cumberbatch threw me back to a theater in 2013 when I watched The Fifth Estate. a movie I had never heard of.
Yeah.
He has bleach blonde hair and does an Australian accent in that movie. I haven't thought about it since I saw it. And she also shared like a GIF.
Yeah.
And it was horrific.
Yeah, well, I was aware of that film. I forgot about it. I never saw it, but he plays Julian Assange in that movie. That's who he is, and that's why he has the blonde, like, long hair. He's playing Julian Assange. Because that movie's all about, like, that whole deal with Assange and everything that went down over there with him and whatnot. But yeah, that's apparently what it's about, and so yeah, that's why he looks like that. But it's not a good look for Benedict.
No, he's not. I feel all these directors out here, like, here we have this man who looks like an alien.
Yeah.
Let's make him look more like an alien.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And our other comment on Twitter was from Kelly Napier, who said, I LOL'd when Katie mentioned getting the character name wrong because of listening to the audiobook. I thought William was being pronounced
was just a weird
was
William.
just a weird William for most of the audiobook. Since a similar blunder is how my middle daughter got her name. I was listening to an audiobook and there was a character named Alina. I loved it and mentioned it to my husband, who loved it too. He asked me how it was spelled and I said very confidently, Elina. So we went with it. It wasn't until she was almost a year old that I got my hands on a physical version of the book and realized, to my horror, that the character was actually spelled Alina, not El. We laugh about it now, but the name, even with its off spelling, fit her perfectly. Was it Shadow and Bone?
That's
Kelly,
literally
was it Shadow and Bone?
That's literally what I was thinking as I was looking up to see when that came out, and I think it could work because I thought the same thing. I was like, well, the main character's name in Shadow and Bone is Alina, so that might be it. Which, Kelly, I don't know if you know. I think we did a bonus episode.
We did, yes,
and I think
did.
Kelly would have probably been a patron at that. Maybe not. If you haven't, go back and look. We did talk about the TV series. I've read all the Shadow and Bone books, and we loved the series. I really enjoyed the series, the Netflix series, and I've read the Six of Crows and the other, whatever the other one is. But anyways, I'm sure there's quite a few novels.
I'm sure there are other fictional characters named Alina.
But I had the exact same thought when I saw that. I was like, what? Because the spelling too makes it like that is how it's spelled. So let us know if that's what it is.
On Instagram, we had 0 votes for the movie and 3 for the book. The Dapper Chelsea guy said, in my opinion, this film is absolutely dire. The 1979 BBC series adaptation is the definitive version to watch.
I would expect no different opinion from the Dapper Chelsea guy. That's amazing.
I mean, I'm sure that the BBC series, I'm sure that, we talk a lot on here about how TV can delve more into what a book is doing. So
I believe I looked it up in that mini series. It was like 3 episodes or something, and I believe it's like 4 or 5 hours. So they have a lot more time to explore stuff than the film did, obviously. And it's got Alec Guinness. I mean, this movie has a lot of great actors. But
for sure. And Tim Wahoo replied to our poll story and said, book has a nice cover.
There you go.
Which the version that I chose for all of the graphics was a nice cover. Very interesting looking.
That's one way to vote.
I mean,
just vote on the cover versus the movie.
They
DVD
say you shouldn't
art.
judge a book by its cover, but you certainly can.
You certainly can.
So.
Nobody will stop you. They may just judge you for it. But anyways, Katie, where did we end up on this one?
Our winner this time was the book with a very slim lead. 8 votes to the movie's 7, plus our 1 listener who couldn't decide between the 2.
Fantastic. So yeah, pretty much split even with a slight edge for the book, which is what you picked. So there you go. All right, it's time now for us to learn a little bit about the author behind our summer series this year, E.L. James.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
So we were gonna do something else for this,
and we're still gonna do.
We're still gonna do it, but it's kind of a more like research and writing heavy segment that we ended up not having time for. So we're pushing it off to our final prequel episode.
Yeah.
For this series. So I thought perchance we could return to the source.
To sleep, perchance to dream.
I was hoping that some of E.L. James' biographical information would help me understand her, but alas, there was very little biographical information
Which
to be
is
found.
wild, because I feel like she's been interviewed quite a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Although British listeners, I'm going to talk about like where she grew up and where she went to school. So if that means anything to you, let us know. Because I don't know like the cultural association.
You don't know what's posh and what's not.
Exactly.
And British people will probably know what's posh and what's not.
Yeah.
So
weigh
the dapper
in.
guy, the dapper Chelsea guy, we're gonna need you to weigh in on this one.
So Erica Mitchell, and she spells her name with a K, Erica. Also known by her pen name E.L. James, also known by her web name Snow Queen's Ice Dragon.
Which is...
I'm never, ever going to stop saying her web name. I love it so
incredible.
much.
I was going to talk shit, but then I was like, I remember names I made up.
Snow Queen's all one word.
In my life.
Ice Dragon, all one word. Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
She's a British author, obviously best known for the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy, as well as its companion novels, of which there are 3.
Oh, God. I only was aware of like the one where it's all three
from his perspective again,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was like one from his perspective and then something else entirely, or okay.
No, my understanding is that they are all just the same books from his perspective.
That makes sense at least.
Erica was born in 1963 to a Chilean mother and a Scottish father who was a BBC cameraman.
Okay.
That is all Wikipedia said.
Fair enough.
She was brought up in Buckinghamshire.
I mean, I'm not saying that's posh, but it sounds posh. But then again, everything in England sounds posh.
In England sounds
I don't know about everything.
A little posh to an American.
Yeah, I don't know. Buckinghamshire or whatever, because you never pronounce them how you think. It's always
that one was.
Maybe it is.
But Buckinghamshire, I don't know.
Usually Shire is not Shire. It's usually like Shire or something.
Again, I'm American. All I know is bad chocolate and tea in Harbor. That's all I know.
Bad chocolate?
Yeah, Europeans are always complaining about our chocolate. Did you not know that?
Yeah, we have bad chocolate.
Yeah, we have bad chocolate.
Yeah, okay, sure. But I thought you were saying they had bad chocolate. Yeah. No. I just because like I think Shire is usually, because that's a thing that I, at least from my memory, they always yell about, the Brits always yell about when Americans are like Shire, and it's like it's sure, like Derbyshire I think is like
Derbyshire,
whatever. Anyways, I don't know, but this one may be Buckinghamshire.
But then there's also the Shire. So
well, that's not it. Yeah, right. I know. Who knows? I don't know.
So anyway, she was brought up in that place and went to school at Piper's Corner School and Wycombe.
Probably Wickham.
Wickham?
I don't know. I'm saying probably. It's spelled like Wycombe.
It's Wycombe. I
wouldn't be surprised if it's Wickham.
That was the high school she went to before studying history at Kent University.
Yeah.
After leaving university, she worked as a studio manager's assistant at the National Film and Television School.
Okay.
Her husband is a novelist and screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
They have 2 sons. It's about all of her biographical
there you go.
information.
Not a whole lot going on there.
But I did find some additional tidbits about the birth of this wonderful series that we're discussing.
Fantastic.
And they're pretty amazing. So in late 2008, she saw the movie Twilight. This was not a thing I was aware of, that this actually started with the movie and not the books.
Really?
She saw the movie and became intensely absorbed with the novels that the movie was based on.
Interesting. So she went backwards.
Now, yes, this is from Wikipedia, and I'm going to tell you what I believe and what I do not believe.
Okay.
It says she read the novel several times over in a period of a few days. I do not believe that.
That's insanity.
I do not believe that.
I say that's insanity. I'm sure there are people who do stuff. Like when I was a little kid, I could see myself reading, because I used to watch the same movie like every freaking day.
Sure.
But reading this, it's a 500-page novel to just back to back to back that thing is wild.
And I feel like the implication here is that she read all of them several times over.
Oh, it
'Cause
says novels. Okay, yeah.
And that's a lot.
Yeah, I initially thought that just meant the first one, but yeah, no, I see it does say novels.
So I don't believe that. But then it went on to say, and then for the first time in her life, sat down to write a book, and I believe that.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. No, yeah, 100%.
So first time in her life, sat down to write a book based on the Twilight Saga. She says she then discovered the phenomenon of fan fiction and decided to publish her work online.
Wow, what a weird
weird
journey.
Yeah. Because if I am to take this,
she
at
in her
face
head
level,
invented fan fiction.
but like if I am to take this at face level, then she didn't know about fan fiction before she started doing this.
She just
which
said,
is interesting to me.
Yeah, she just said, I'm gonna write a novel based on this novel.
And then was like, oh, hey.
Oh, that's a thing that people
do. That's a
do.
thing that already exists.
Yes, that's wild to me.
You know, and I bet she did think she invented that up until she discovered. I would put money down that she believed she invented the concept of fan fiction until she like got online.
She got on the internet and was like, wait a second. This is a whole thing.
She's also spoken of her shock at the success of the books.
That I believe, yep.
Quote, the explosion of interest has taken me completely by surprise. And then this is my favorite part. This is chef's kiss. James has described the 50 Shades trilogy as, quote, my midlife crisis writ large. All my fantasies are in there, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you know what, Erica? I can tell.
That quote, I remember, that's from the one interview I watched. That was on like 60 Minutes or Dateline, whatever. It was some like American, nightly or like weekly night news show, network news show. And it was, somebody was interviewing. And I remember her saying, my midlife crisis writ large, all my fantasies are in there. Cause that's where I said, like, she said that like it's all of her fantasies in there or whatever. And I was like, that's how we know she has a foot fetish. That's how we know because she told us as much in her interviews. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my midlife crisis. It's all my fantasies. Oh, girl, we know.
Yep.
We can tell.
Yep. You wrote the book.
In August 2013, James topped Forbes' list of highest paid authors due to her book sales, earnings of around $95 million, which did include $5 million for the film rights. She was also on Time's list of 100 most influential people in 2012.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah. As well as being named Publishers Weekly's Publishing Person of the Year that same year.
That's such a weird title. Publishing person. That's a backhanded ass compliment. We're not going to call you an author, but you sold a lot of books.
I was assuming that they did it like that so they could give it to like anyone in the industry.
Right.
Like, an author or an editor or an agent or
something, whatever, yeah. Maybe,
yeah. But maybe it is a backhanded compliment.
Well, I don't think it's a bad. I think it's also probably just more like, they can give it to anybody and also to tie into Publishers Weekly. Yeah. Instead of saying author, they're like, it's their award, so they call it the publishing and whoever they give it to. Yeah.
My last note here, in 2019, and I remember when this came out. I remember hearing about this.
I remember the title rings a bell, yeah.
She published her first book, unconnected with the fictional world of 50 Shades, titled The Mister, to negative critical response.
No, what? No.
No way.
No way. I mean, it's not like the 50 Shades series got positive critical response. It's not like a J.K. Rowling thing where like Harry Potter got good reviews and then she published whatever that garbage afterwards and it got terrible review. The Roger Altman pen name stuff or whatever. It's just like, man, just continuing to write bad stuff and publishing it. But yeah. Oh, that's fun. All right. Let's learn now a little bit about the second book in the 50 Shades trilogy, 50 Shades Darker.
I want you back. I had no idea what this was going to become.
I don't see how this can work. You're just going to stand there gawking?
Yes.
Well, you said a little bit, and that is this is our briefest book fact segment yet.
Yeah, it's very short.
50 Shades Darker is a 2012 erotic romance novel by a one E.L. James, previously discussed. That is the second installment in the 50 Shades trilogy. We discussed the origin story of the 50 Shades trilogy in our 50 Shades of Grey prequel, so I'm not going to rehash that all here, which is part of the reason that this segment is so short.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this segment usually is, how did this book come to be?
Yeah, and
We
in
don't need to
particular
talk
with
about
this
that
one,
again.
from our understanding, these were all written together.
Together.
So it kind of
When,
was
when
one
E.L.
thing.
James invented fan fiction.
Yes. She invented fan fiction and then wrote it all. Yeah. Yes.
The novel reached the number 2 spot on the USA Today bestseller list. It is also considered by The Guardian to be number 11 on the top 100 best-selling books of all time in the UK.
Oh, what's up with you guys? UK, what's up? What's your guys' deal?
I don't know. Let us know.
That's weird. I don't like that.
There weren't any review pull quotes on Wikipedia, so I had to go looking, and I could not really find any reviews that weren't from like people's personal blogs,
Like not like actual like reviewers.
but I did find one from Kirkus Reviews, and Kirkus called it, quote, "Not the best thing you've ever read, not the worst, but not to be taken too seriously."
That is, I would rather have, if I wrote a book, I would rather have that's maybe the worst review I've ever heard. Like, I think I would rather have a voracious, whatever the word is.
Voracious?
Voracious. A voraciously negative review of my work rather than not great, not terrible, but don't take it seriously. Don't take it seriously?
Kirkus Reviews really said, who cares?
Yeah, their review was, who the fuck cares? Whatever. Like, that's woof. All right, I have a few more notes in the movie segment, so let's learn now about 50 Shades Darker, the film.
You got me looking so
What do you want, Anastasia?
This time, no rules, no punishments, and no more secrets.
looking so crazy in love. Got me looking so crazy in love.
50 Shades Darker is a 2017 film directed by James Foley, who is known for directing Glengarry Glen Ross, Perfect Stranger, At Close Range, and After Dark, My Sweet.
I've never heard of any of that.
Only one I had heard of was Glengarry Glen Ross, which is a fairly famous or well-known film from the 90s. Or 80s, 90s. Alec Baldwin, handful of other people. It's about like real estate. It's like a
Oh, that sounds really boring.
It's like a business drama, which makes sense. And then After Dark, My Sweet is like a romantic thriller. So this guy has like a background in like
that resume makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah. And then now, getting to the writing credit, let me take you on this journey that I went on doing the research here. These are the notes as I wrote them as I was this is as I was going on this journey. I wrote, written by some guy named Niall Leonard, who I went to his IMDb, clicked on his. I'm like, I've never heard of this writer. Not that that's super uncommon because every now and then we get people I've never heard of. But I clicked on his name and it took me to his IMDb page, and he was known for Wire in the Blood, and a handful of other things that seemed to be exclusively British TV shows. And I was like, okay. And I was like, man, this guy has like 0 credits. And then my brain was like, Niall, why does that name sound familiar? And then I was like, wait a second. Niall is one of the people that E.L. James thanks in the acknowledgement. This is E.L. James's husband! That was what my brain did as I was researching this. I was like, son of a bitch. So yeah, this movie and the third one are both adapted by her husband.
Cheers.
Amazing. Incredible. Incredible. We'll get into it more in just a second here about why that is probably. But yeah, just amazing. The film stars Dakota Johnson, Jamie Dornan, Eric Johnson, Eloise Mumford, Bella Heathcote, Rita Ora, Jennifer Ailey, Luke Grimes, Victor Rasick, Max Martini, Marcia Gay Harden, and Kim Basinger. The film has an 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 33 out of 100 on Metacritic, and a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb. I like to do this for the summer series. For comparison's sake, the first film had a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, so more than double the score for the first film. A 46 on Metacritic, so 10, 11, or 13 points higher, and a 4.1 out of 10 on IMDb. So critics liked the first film more. General audiences gave the second film a slightly higher score. Still low, but slightly higher. Half a point.
None
higher.
of this makes me feel good.
No, not at all. And it'll get where it makes sense. I mean, I think we peaked. I think our review of the first film, like and our appreciation for it as an adaptation, it's all downhill from there, baby.
Cool.
I'm pretty sure. The film made $381 million against a budget of $55 million, so close to $200 million less than the first film made on a $15 million higher budget. The first film made like 500 and something million, 569, because I remember it was 569 million. So yeah, 200 million less and a slightly higher budget. Still made tons of money. It's not like it was not successful.
Right.
It was still incredibly successful, just not as successful as the first one. So getting into some notes here. In March of 2014, producer for the first film, Dana Brunetti, had said that there were, as of then, no plans to make a sequel. The director of the first film, Sam Taylor Johnson, would go on to say that there would be sequels made, but that she had not been privy to discussions, and officially she left the franchise on March 25th of 2015. Apparently, she refused to consider returning for the sequel. She cited frequent clashes with author E.L. James, who had received final approval on everything from the studio, and that this was a source of much frustration for her. She would go on to be replaced by James Foley, who was stated to, quote, have a great relationship with the author. So this is, I think, a combination. This is we know why James Foley, apparently great relationship with the author, and Niall Leonard replaced our screenwriter from the first, and the screenwriter left for very similar reasons. I did not include those notes here, but just the author just being hard to work with E.L. James. So very clearly what happened here is E.L. James is a nightmare person to work with at least, and wanted people who would go, yes, ma'am, whatever you say, we will do. And so she got her husband to write the second and third film.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it's just even more evidence to your argument from the first one that she is in fact not Dakota, or somebody else, I think, that she is not in fact Dakota Johnson, but or not in fact Anastasia Steele, but is in fact Christian Grey. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to conjecture wildly, but somehow it does not surprise me that she would have more difficulty working with women.
Women? Oh, she does not have a high opinion of women based on her writing in this film. She
strikes me as a men just cause less drama type of girl.
Right, yeah. I will also say that it does not surprise me based on this information that the second and third films are both considerably, like, not even that much worse regarded by critics, but like notably, like, again, the Rotten Tomatoes score is less than half of what the first film was. And we like we said in our discussion of the first film, we thought it was pretty overall, like, fairly well done and a pretty good adaptation. Getting rid of the only things that made that film work, well, in terms of like behind the camera, the only things that made that film work, which was the changes they made to the characters, the screenplay, the direction, the writing. Get rid of those two people because they actually have artistic talent and vision, and replacing them with literal yes men who will be like, whatever you say, E.L. James, we will do.
Whatever you say, honey.
Yes, makes perfect sense that these were downhill from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yep. And then on top of that, in November of 2015, Universal Studios announced that this film, 50 Shades Darker, and its sequel, 50 Shades Freed, would be shot back to back, with principal photography scheduled to commence in early 2016. Filming for both films took place in Paris and Vancouver from February 9th of 2016 to July 12th of 2016. Under the working title, apparently, of The Further Adventures of Max and Banks 2 and 3. So...
All right.
A weird working title. I mean, working titles are always weird, but yeah, so they filmed these back to back, and I think they realized we need to keep that's one way you can keep the budget down a little bit. Is film stuff back to back. Don't worry about just do it all at once. It works for this too, in this instance, for the type of films they are. But also then they knew they were just going to stick with this writer and director because that's what E.L. James wanted. So they were just like, all right, we'll just do it all back to back. We're not going to wait and see how the second one plays out. Do we need to make a change or anything? Nope, we're just going to film it all so we can get these done and make our money and wash our hands of this. That is my guess of what was going on behind the scenes there. So getting into some IMDb notes here that I thought were interesting. Dakota Johnson revealed that for their pregame ritual before filming their sex scenes, she and Jamie Dornan each had different things that they would do. She apparently would drink a glass of whiskey, and Jamie Dornan would do push-ups, which is amazing.
A relatable queen.
And I can just imagine. I hope there's behind-the-scenes footage somewhere. Of Jamie Dornan just doing push-ups and her in the background just sitting in a chair drinking a glass of whiskey. That would be very funny to me. There needs to be fan art of that if that doesn't exist already. I love that so much. Dornan also said that they would have a conversation amongst themselves to kind of work out the scenes in addition to whatever the director's instruction was. There's a scene in this film that shows Jamie Dornan's character as having a UFC poster on the wall in his room. Jamie Dornan said that it was done on purpose to create a, quote, more masculine image for Grey. He said, quote, "We wanted Christian to come across as tougher. I wanted him to be physically more imposing in this movie and to show that he could handle himself and that he could also be a bit rough. So the idea that he was into ultimate fighting made sense." End quote. Like, sure.
What?
Okay, I guess. I don't know.
I guess.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. I will say it makes sense if you buy if Jamie Dornan understands that his character is an asshole. I'm not saying that being in the UFC makes you an asshole. I'm just saying that his description of the character here, like what he said about the character and being more physically imposing and stuff, if you're aware that if he's aware that his character is kind of a villain at times, then having him be kind of like giving him character traits that are like in the orbit of assholes at times is like a thing that makes sense. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. It's that kind of like overcompensation thing.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I want him to be tough and like he's like imposing and like if he's aware of the character, I don't know. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying like if he's aware of kind of the character he's playing and the way he comes across, then having him have this kind of overcompensating machismo kind of works potentially. Because I also like rolled my eyes and laughed at that when I read it at first. I was like, I guess I could see it depending on the context or whatever. So this is also fun. Again, these are all IMDb trivia, so who knows? Apparently, after receiving backlash from the first film that a clean-shaven Jamie Dornan was not sexy enough as Christian Grey, the producers decided that he should keep his stubble for this sequel.
You know what? I didn't even notice.
I didn't notice either, but apparently he has stubble in this one, and it's way sexier.
Apparently, clean shaven was not the thing.
I also cut out a note, but I had a note at one point about how Jamie Dornan is apparently much beefier in this one. He said for the first film he got cast like 5 weeks before filming started, so he didn't, because there was the whole thing with Charlie Hunnam and whatnot. So he got cast like a month before the film started shooting, so he didn't have enough time
to bulk up.
But for this one, he said he had like 2 years, and so he's like jacked to shit in this one. apparently.
I already hate this movie.
Yeah, which is so funny because he was like a very to me his physique was like totally fine.
It worked.
Yeah.
He was like very clearly
Like,
in shape.
very in shape, muscular, but like believably
Yeah.
so, and like he doesn't spend all of his time working out. You know,
Right.
like. Because in this book, I just read it like literally last night. He says he works out like every weekday, like an hour every weekday,
Yeah.
which that's a lot. But if you do that, that's not like The Rock works out way more than 1 hour every weekday. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you want to have a body like and does steroids and whatnot, but like that like huge like crazy muscle bound look is more than 1 hour 5 days a week or whatever. And I thought, whatever. I was like, I don't think you needed to, but sure, man, whatever. I don't, whatever floats your boat. All right, getting into some reviews, because these are super fun. Richard Roper gave the film 2 out of 4 stars and said, quote, "This is one good-looking, occasionally titillating, mostly soapy, and dull snooze fest." Vince Mancini of Uprocks acknowledged the film's flaws, but said that watching the film was enjoyable, saying, quote, "Narrative sloppiness aside, as an outsider, sitting through 50 Shades Darker was a reasonably diverting experience. Odd, dumb fun made even more fun by an audience that whooped and shouted at the screen during sex scenes. I didn't really get it, but I enjoyed the feeling of them having fun, though at 2 hours plus, it's a bit of a slog." I like this review a lot. I like that he's like, I wasn't into it, but it seemed like everybody else was having a good time, so I think that's a fun energy to bring to a movie review. I don't know if it makes the most sense, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Manola Dargis, writing for the New York Times, expressed similar ambiguous opinions regarding the content of the film, stating, quote, "I was still rooting for Miss Johnson in 50 Shades Darker, even if it proved tough going. Once again, the story involves the on and off, tie her up, tie her down romance between Anastasia Steele, Miss Johnson, and her billionaire boyfriend, Christian Grey, Jamie Dornan. A guy with sculpted muscles, expensive playthings, and dreary issues. Stuff and kink happens, a gun is fired, a would-be rapist is punished, and Anastasia is bound hand and foot. Mostly she advances and retreats, in parenthetical, repeat, mules and moans, and registers surprise each time Christian tries to dominate her outside the bedroom, evincing the kind of stalker-like behavior that usually leads to restraining orders," end quote. So yeah, it sounds like this movie very much does not follow in foot of the first film of correcting some of the issues, but who knows. And finally, Richard Brody of The New Yorker described the film as inferior to the first and found fault in the change in directors, saying, quote, "Some of the greatest Hollywood melodramas, such as Douglas Sirk's Magnificent Obsession, featured plot lines of an even more extravagant absurdity than that of 50 Shades Darker. Their extreme artifice became a framework for extreme ideas and extreme emotions, even in an era of extreme public reticence about what goes on in the bedroom. The freedom of the current age of sexual explicitness invites realms of characterization and of intimate imagination that the first film in the 50 Shades series hints at and the second film utterly ignores. 50 Shades Darker's indifference to its characters' identities, conflicts, and desires is matched by its indifference to its own cinematic substance. The film's bland impersonality is grotesque. Its element of pornography isn't in its depiction of sex, but in its depiction of people, of relationships, of situations that, for all their unusualness, bear a strong psychological and societal resonance. There's nothing wrong with 50 Shades Darker that a good director couldn't fix."
Oh, burn.
Got him. Oh, goodness. Amazing. I thought it was a good, lots of really fun reviews for this film. People were like, all right, they stretched out at their keyboard, poured themselves a whiskey, and were like, let's do it. Time to get wild. But I enjoyed all of those reviews. Katie, before we get to where people can watch it, we wanted to remind you can do us a giant favor by heading over to patreon.com, supporting us for a couple bucks a month there. Get access to bonus, technically $5 a month, you get access to bonus content. I always say that. $2 gets you support us and a handful of things, but $5 a month and up, you get access to our bonus content. We're about to record within tonight or at some point very soon, we're going to record our bonus episode on Midsommar, which we just watched the other day. Very interesting film. So we'll have a discussion about that here out shortly. When you're hearing this, within a few days or a week or something like that, you'll be hearing that bonus episode. Also, you can do us a giant favor by heading over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Goodreads, any of the social media platforms. Find us there, search for This Film Was Lit, follow us, interact with us. We would like to hear from you. Katie, where can people watch 50 Shades Darker?
Well, you can check with your library or a local video rental store if you've still got one.
Probably got to go through those little curtains. I don't think so.
No,
it's
probably
rated
not.
R. Maybe the unrated cut might be back there. I don't know if they have an unrated cut. Yeah.
But barring that, you can stream this with ads on the Roku channel.
Yep.
Or you can rent it for around $3 to $4 through Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, Redbox, AMC Theaters on Demand, or Spectrum TV.
There you go. I am not excited about this.
No.
I'm like 150 pages in, and boy, this is...
I spent the first chunk of book one just like laughing at how bad it was.
Right.
And I spent the first chunk of this book in a visceral full body rage.
It's just the same. I can't get over how you could possibly choose to do the most boring thing with your it's just nothing. It makes sense that they were all written like together because you didn't have any time she didn't like sit and think about interesting places to take the story. She just
kept trucking.
I have a feeling our predictions from the main episodes are going to be so much more interesting than anything that ever happens in the actual series now, which is disappointing because I literally didn't. We spent minutes literally thinking up these like kind of generic ideas for where the story could go and her plot. And I mean, at least so far,
we spent minutes on it, but we still like put some thought into it and like, oh, what makes sense for this story?
Right.
What makes sense for like I thought about how it started as fan fiction and how it was based on Twilight.
Yeah.
And I don't think she thought about any of that.
I don't think she thought about it at all. I think she thought, I want to do more of the same thing. Again, I'm only 150 pages or whatever in, but it's the exact same thing again, and I just hate it. We shall see where it goes. All right. We'll be talking about 50 Shades Darker in 1 week's time. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.